employees grew in the department, and having a .05 only allocated to X amount of hours for those individuals has been determined to not be sufficient to function to employees for 24 hours, 365 days of the year. So just a little background to that for everyone
And
that's
that's like
new
I mentioned
here.
earlier, yep, same thing. You see on item 10400 overtime, by doing some evaluation times, we were able to decrease that line item a little bit and basically divert it off to a different area, which we can track better. The same thing goes for 10402. A slight decrease, but not much, of 11%. And on page 3, if you get to that far, it's on item 10248. That's where I mentioned earlier about the extra funding for the fire school. Like I said, most times the fire school event, we also support County Fire Association. And most times, almost all the time, it's an EMT that goes out. That way we get the paramedic available in the county to take calls. So again, same thing there. This year we're supporting again. We're sending 2 people out there on their days off for like Saturdays, like from 11 till 4, and Sundays from noon to 3. So it's not a massive amount of time, but still it counts towards their pay and benefits.
Why the big jump on the wage plan employees?
Which item?
10,003. Page 2.
I'm sorry.
Page 2, 10,003. Wage plan employees, increase of 75,654.
Yeah, it's
That I'm not sure.
I'm wondering if part of that increase is like a double dip on the improvement requests.
No, the improvement request wouldn't have been added on that line. That was a separate transaction after we imported the payroll.
Okay.
looks off.
So that number is supposed to cover 4.25 paramedics that we're talking about?
Right, it would bring it up to that.
But see, that's what doesn't make any sense, is that if the paramedics get moved around, that's in the improvement request down here, and that hasn't been approved, so then why is there the big jump on the wage plan employees?
So it looks like last year, we budgeted for 4.1.
The last summer we got approval for a fourth medic. And that spot was filled briefly for a while until a person left, and that spot remains open. So that extra money, that's probably the medic that's still spot that's open that not been filled yet. That would be the jump from last year because it was added.
Sure. Yeah, so that extra 75,000 is one paramedic's salary.
Pretty close.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's what it is. Yep. Yep, that's what it is.
Does that mean then that we didn't have a budget amendment for that amount because of staffing?
Yeah.
If this was approved after the budgets were approved last year, those budget amendments don't happen until May.
Okay.
So
okay.
that's when, if something's approved at a board meeting, we don't make that amendment immediately when that happens.
That was like in June, I think it was, July. It'll be July or August we did that,
Yep.
roughly.
Okay.
So then on the holiday scheduled off and then the training events, where those budget, it says that they were put in different line items last year, so then were those budget amendments that'll show up in May then, too, or?
So when we get to the point of doing budget amendments, the departments will have to review their budgets and see where they have to offset them. So we won't, unless they need those funds, and we don't go line by line, we go by the total within that function. So if they need the money, then they can explain, I had an approved increase in my FTEs, and that's why I'm short, and so that's why I need the amendment at that time.
What is our current status on 24/7 coverage? I know that's our goal. You know, as far as paramedic coverage, how are we doing with our current staff? Is this improvement request related to getting up to that?
It's going well. Unfortunately, there's times, it's like everything else, nothing going on for a day, and all of a sudden you'll get three in a row. Or right at the same time, like the other day we had a call, they started heading out for Salix, and they popped a call in Anthony, and they comm center would tell, hey, which one's the worst one? They would divert. We're running into that a little more often. I talked to comm center yesterday, trying to find out how many calls we're missing when we're already on an assignment, and they can't track it. I was trying to hope and find out so I could at least bring it back and say, this is how many times this is happening where we're having 2 requests, or another one where they're en route to. There's no way of a number to find out. As far as that goes, as far as plans for it, I've been working on an idea that potentially, again, this is all on the drafting stage and evaluation stage, of potentially making that 4th position and making that a daytime position. The problem there, I'm just trying to figure out how many hours a week that position would be. Would it be an 8-hour? Would it be a 12-hour? To compete with the other hours that people are getting, because I know some people think, well, gee, this person's getting 40 hours doing this, and I'm working this many hours, and I'm not getting the overtime that they're getting. So I'm just trying to figure out how to balance that all out to be appealing, but still get the coverage. More than likely, it'd be a daytime, Monday through Friday thing at this point. The idea would be probably too, I need to talk to some departments that during the daytime, maybe this additional medic would be stationed someplace east side of the county. Because it seems right now at times the harder served area, which we already know has been going up for years, it's nothing new. But that would be the consideration of either moving that one particular person, or the current duty truck can go there and they want to stay at Climbing Hill and then cover basically anything in the Mobile Blacktop West. It's in the process. I'm just trying to figure out in my head and a few other things and look at stats, what best fits for the monies we're going to spend and get the best out of it.
But as far as having someone ready to respond, we're covered pretty well.
Right now, we're doing pretty good. I mean, we have not had a day yet where, knock on wood, that I didn't have a medic working.
Okay.
Once in a while, when we first came into the position, a couple of times they had no EMTs, so unfortunately I had to bring a medic in on extra pay to cover that spot. Before I got hurt, after I would cover spots until somebody could get off their other full-time job, come in and work. So for the most part, we've been good in getting the coverage done.
Good.
A couple of days where some people were sick all of a sudden, guys stepped up, or gals stepped up right away, came in with it as soon as they could, and they got it filled.
How often are you having to help with calls personally, either by choice or necessity?
Well, up till September, I was doing it probably once a week. Since that time, I've been on the IR list. I'll hopefully be off of that, but when I go back, it'll be, well, a short time from May through September. It was probably, I'd go at least once a week where I'd gone out and covered a call for the crew. Someone called it, make it on scene. A few of them transporting with the patient. It's kind of hit and miss, but yeah, I've done some. And that was always the intent too. We talked about it before I first got hired. That was my intent. I'd sit in the office, twiddle my thumbs. If they're needing somebody to go out and do a call, I'm going to do a call if I can do it, but not busy with something of high importance.
Yeah, and I think that's working well. I think that was the board's intent, was to have you be an option.
Yep.
And not necessarily, tell us, 4 days a week I'm going out. That wouldn't be what we want. But this is good to hear. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
And my staff knows that too. You missed that first meeting, I guess, but I told them the very first meeting we all met together that just because you see me sitting in the office this moment when you leave on the call, if something comes in 10 minutes later, I don't go, there's a reason. I'm on a conference call or something came up, I left. I said, if I can go, I'll go. If I don't, you're on your own. Take care of it as you do normally.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is animal control.
Okay, and this will come out of the Rural Basic Fund, which is one of our limited funds that we have.
I'll move to receive.
Second.
All right, motion by Nelson, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion passes 5-0. All right, EMS training?
And this will maintain its own fund balance and is a non-taxable fund.
Okay. All right.
Move to receive.
Second.
All right, motion by Nelson, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Next up is juvenile detention.
So we did find some errors in our payroll calculations on juvenile detention, and the packet got printed before the errors were sent out. So on your screens will be the accurate information. I believe the dollar amount should be the same. It was just a matter of some temp employees, some part-time employees being coded as temporary employees, which they were not. So that's been corrected on what you would receive, which is on screen. The other thing to note is there's a agenda item on tonight's board meeting to increase Director Weber's salary. That was not included as an improvement request, so if you'd like to include that as an improvement request for our max, the total increase will be $10,834 for fiscal year '26.
Can you say that one more time again, Michelle? You said 10,000?
10,800, well, let's round up, 10,835.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Ryan.
Ryan Weber, Juvenile Detention Director. Not much different this year. If you can't see the breakdowns, but I did it. My payroll and benefits comes out to about $2,048,594. You can see my budget at the end is currently at $1,760,000. So I'm basically doing everything for free with the revenue I bring in, minus the payroll. So the only improvements we need is our clientele has been getting bad. We have to hold adult waiver kids now for murder and such, and they stay a long time, and they've got nothing left to live for, so it's a constant struggle. I went through the jail with building services and took everything out of there that I could use. I salvaged a lot of their tables and stuff, or tables that we needed. Stuff that we couldn't use, I have to buy new this year. Other than that, we're just looking at, we need a new computer system for the cameras. Everything else is just needs, there isn't any wants on there. Overtime, I'm having a hard time budget for what the actuals have been. I think we can do better on it. Overtime also does correlate of how many out-of-state youth I take. You need more staff when you bring in harder youth. So those are kind of catch-22 on those. But basically with our out-of-county youth and out-of-state youth, I can, the sky's the limit as far as what I want to bring in, just depending on our milieu and how difficult the kids we want to bring with. I mean, I could do my wage 5 times over if I wanted to, bring in extra kids. So even though that goes to the general fund, we don't get any of it. It's still taxpayer dollars.
Could you just, summarize the reimbursement rates we currently have?
Yeah, the state of Nebraska pays me $204 a day, and anything in Iowa is $100 or $200 a day. Sorry, which one kid for 30 days, it adds up pretty fast. And last year we cut the food budget in basically 2/3. So, we can't. I was for when we negotiated new shift differentials because I believe the weekend and overnight people needed more money last year, and that got approved. So there's a bit bump there. You got to remember overtime also includes holidays in there too. So everybody wants holidays off. So I don't think. I still want to try to get it around that 40,000. I did it my first few years. I think we can do it again. Obviously, COVID killed us. This year we had 3 people on light duty that you have to bring somebody else in for. I mean, that stuff adds up to, it comes to 40,000 pretty quick at that point. But most of the holidays, we have one holiday left, I think, until the year's over. So I think we can come close on that. and do better next year.
See the audit price, that's,
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
going
I'd
up,
love to
yeah.
use somebody other than Williams and Company if you'd allow me to, but, you know, I know Weber Accounting Business, I could do it for a fourth. But yeah, that's, we have to have that done to get, I used to be able to do it myself, and it was super easy to do, but now the state requires you to have a licensed auditor do it, and that's part of the 300 and some thousand I get back for reimbursement, so
okay.
it's a good thing for an intern to do it, Williams and Company. And they have access to everything already, because they have to go through basically all county expenses when they do it, so.
Can you describe how you make the decision to accept, outside guests? Is
Yeah, I
it
mean-
based mostly on staffing or the nature of the ages or anything like that?
You know, it's got a lot to do with our staffing situation, if it's, you know, a holiday or we have staff gone. I do screen for the types of behaviors, but again, they're coming to us because there's nowhere else to go, so we have to be, and I always say that's why we're there, we're the last resort, we can't pick and choose, and I'd rather have those kids with me, they're safer with me than they are anywhere else. But yeah, that's basically the gist of what the milieu's like at the detention center right now. Right now, we've got 3 different kids that were kicked out of placement for shanks and stabbing people, and so we obviously gotta put, you know, all staff eyes on them and, you know, keep, you know, the out-of-county ones to maybe 5 or 6. We get a lot of, you know, Des Moines is full, we get a lot of kids from there, and they usually send us their better kids, because they don't want the hassle of having to drive all the way back up and get them if something goes bad. But it's just, I mean, day-to-day basis, I gotta make the decision. Most often, it's 2:00 in the morning, but just based on how things are going. I'll never bring in a couple crazy ones, it's the staff are having a hard time, you know, I just base it on how everything's going. Right now, we got a good crew, I feel comfortable they can handle most any kid, so.
Yeah.
But it is completely up to me what I bring in and what I don't.
Okay. Any other questions? I think I would, when we receive this, I would say we probably should put in that 10,835 increase, just so that's in the max levy.
Yep.
So, if no further questions, I would move to receive with the amendment of the $10,835 increase.
Second?
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is building services.
So I worked with Kenny the last couple of days. We did have some employees who moved around between a few of the offices. So items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 9 are gonna have some changes on the screen. So if you will receive these based on what you see on the screens of the changes, would be the organized employee lines. The total for the entire building services budget did not change, just where those employees are
Okay.
located changed.
Perfect. Okay. All right, I'll move to receive.
Second?
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. All right,
Good
Ken.
afternoon. I've handed you out an updated full-time employee list. It also lists the accounts that those people actually fall under. As we move forward through these budgets, each building has a different account number. those correlate to those numbers you see on that page for those employees, to give you an idea what employee is where. There's 1 maintenance supervisor, 7 maintenance technicians, 1 EVS custodial supervisor, 2 custodial leads, 10 custodians, and 1 part-time aide. For our facilities and buildings, we're operating approximately 320,000 square feet. Operating and CIP square footages are 701,500. And we take care of some other properties whereby we take care of lots. We do mowing, remove trash, have to replace concrete once in a while and do some snow removal once in a while on some properties that the county tries to sell. Those usually average, they fluctuate, but average between 10 to 14 different lots annually. Building services funding sources are categorized as operating budgets, repair agreement budgets, and capital improvement projects. Facilities with our operating budgets are the courthouse, account 9101, the LEC, the old LEC, I should say, 9102. Trosper Hoyt Building is 9103. Prairie Hills Training Center is 9105. Building Services Facility Administration is 9108. The Tri-View Facility is 9109, and the new Law Enforcement Justice Center is 9113. We have facilities with variable agreement repairs, and I'd like to explain that a little bit since we've got some newer members here. I categorize these as the Anthon Courthouse, which is account 9104. About 7 or 8 years ago, the Anthon Courthouse was donated to the county by the city of Anthon. The facility needed some roof repairs, and they were not, the city was not prepared to make those repairs. And so the county supervisors agreed to take over that facility. The other building is the Siouxland District Health Facility, which is the 9106 account. The agreement with that facility is the counties will make any repairs that exceed $2,500 per occurrence, and there is no limit on occurrences currently. Capital improvement projects for our facilities, all the facilities I previously mentioned fall under capital improvements. There's 2 others that we include. That's the Dorothy Pico Nature Center and the Climbing Hill Emergency Services. General budget accounts, as we go through these, you'll find that my budgets are heavily weighted on utilities. They drive our budget. Natural gas, electricity, domestic water, and sewer, those are our biggest line items. Natural gas budget and percentage increases are based on Henry Hub. Are you, all of you or any of you familiar with Henry Hub? Would you like me to take a second to describe that?
Why not?
Okay. Henry Hub is a huge natural gas pipeline in Louisiana. It has extensive connectivity to major pipelines owned by Transcontinental, Acadian, and Sabine. It serves the pricing benchmark for the New York Stock Exchange on natural gas prices and futures and future contracts. So it drives the entire market. They do projections on annually on what their cost increases are going to be into the future. Averages for 2025 were $3.14 MMBTU. That's what gas is rated in. As of January last month, their projection for 2026 was $3.97 MMBTU, which is a 26% increase from 25 to 26. So as we go forward and do my projections for my buildings and my budget on natural gas, I projected those using our 2023 and 2024 averages plus 3%. We try to do a proximity on what we see the gas cost going up as a Henry Hub index price, and what our past usage was, and try to do a comparison and the best estimates that we can do between the two. For electricity, the Central United States Mid-American projection is 2% increase over 2025 for 2026. Again, we did a 23-24 average of our costs and added 3%. With that, I'd like to get started through the budgets. Most of our budgets will start on your second page with accounts that'll probably say something like salt, electrical supplies, and so on. But the courthouse, which is 9101, we are asking for a budget that is a 1% reduction from last year overall. And I take any question that you have on the courthouse budget. And you'll find as we go through these budgets, they're laid out basically almost line item per line item through each different account and each different building. So as you see one item on one page, it'll probably be very close to the same item on the next account.
All right, any questions from the board on this one? All right, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Binger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. The LEC?
The LEC is the old LEC, account 9102. There is only one line item in that budget that is for continued well monitoring. That line item will continue into the future until such a point that we are able to terminate monitoring of the wells on that site. That is being driven mostly by a well that we do not have control over, which is in the same aquifer that our property sits near. The Pioneer Bank has a geothermal well, trying to work with them on a possibility of possibly upgrading their system in an effort to terminate and cap their well, which the end result would allow us to discontinue all monitoring at some point.
Did the employee on this one get moved over to a different?
Yes, all of those, if you look at your screens here, you can see that those items were reduced to zero. That employee was moved to Fund 9113, which is the new LEC.
Okay.
The total budget on your screens is 27,629.
Not asking to get too specific, but roughly how long have you been trying to work with the owner of that well to ensure that we are able to cap it?
Over a year.
Thank you.
I have gotten some movement recently, so hopefully we're headed in the right direction.
Good. All right, I'll move to receive.
Second.
All right, motion by Binger, second by Carper. Any other questions, discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Go again, yeah. Go ahead, yep.
Next building is the Trash per Weight facility. This budget has a 16% increase, mostly due to water, sewer, trash, and employee wages. And when I say employee wages, I think your sheet shows it, but there was an employee move from one billing account to this billing account.
Michelle, why is what's on the screen different than?
This is those employee moves that I had mentioned.
Oh,
that-
okay.
That this was printed out before we caught this, so we corrected it in the system. Kenny's got the corrected, but it didn't get printed out with the
Oh,
corrected.
that's all right.
All right, any discussion? Any questions? All right, I'll move it to receive.
Second.
All right, motion by Benjer, second by Dietrich. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. All right, on to building services.
This account is 90108. This is the building services facility. Got an increase of 4.8%, basically due to chemicals, herbicides, and again, employee wages. And again, 4.8% increase. I don't think there's anything out of the norm on that. This facility, or this account, is where we pay my director's salary and my 2 supervisors' salaries, and one of the custodial leads.
All right, any questions from supervisors?
Any questions on 9108?
I'll move to receive.
I'll second that. Motion by Dietrich, second by Benjer. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is the Anthem Courthouse.
Yes, this is the Anthem Courthouse, 9104. There is no increase or decrease, it's a flat rate. Initially, several years ago, there wasn't any funding at all for the Anthem Courthouse. Again, this is a building that the county kind of assumed from the city of Anthem. At one point several years ago, I came to the board and said, look, we've got to at least put some kind of a placeholder in this building for some repairs. I consider this a very small placeholder, but they need some things once in a while. Maybe a lock goes bad, maybe a window
Flagpole.
cracks or caulking or something. So this is a budget repair placeholder that we have,
Right.
which would be different than a CIP if one were to come out.
I move to receive.
Second.
All right, motion by Nelson, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. All right, Prairie Hills Facility.
9105 is a Prairie Hills Training Center. This budget is 4.7% decrease. Basically, that decrease is driven by professional services being a little lower. Again, we do averages to try to determine what our best costs are going to be for the budget year. Sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower, but this is our best estimate in between, so.
Okay,
Move to receive.
I'll second that. Motion by Nelson, seconded by Bittenger. Questions? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next up is the District Health Building.
Siouxland District Health is account 9106. It is one of those variable repair buildings that I spoke of early on. It is a bit of a challenge to try to budget. The current agreement that the board has with Siouxland District Health is that Woodbury County Building Services will incur all costs that exceed a $2,500 limit per incident, with a no limit of incidences, and that's what makes it difficult, so very difficult for my department. We've seen these costs continue to go up and the incidents continue to rise. This current budget year, I can tell you that Kevin Green had an incident. We'd been hit by several incidents already, but he came to me with another one, and I said, "You've already burst my budget by double. I can't do it. You have to go to the board and request funds." And so that's why I say this is a difficult, very difficult budget for us to try to get a handle on.
Well, yeah, looking at the last 2 years' activity so far, yeah, it's 20,000 would seem to be in line.
Yeah, it doesn't take long when you've got a couple air compressors that go bad on some HVAC roof units.
Right.
So from a practical sense, the real limit is just the total dollar amount of the parent budget here, because this is a particular division or?
I believe this is underfunding, but we never know what's going to take place. We know the building's getting older, and we know that they're probably going to have an increase in those repair incidents coming forward. Again, we do our best projection on what we can see, and we try to be respectful of the board's funds and what you've requested us to do in years past on increases. So with that said, this budget, as well as the other account budgets, we've tried to hold our costs to the line. As we finish out these accounts, I am going to speak to that just briefly.
But as far as this account works, in real life going forward, it's really limited only by your overall budget, unless you say, my overall budget can't sustain $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in this $10,000 or $20,000
Yes.
budget.
Yes. And that, to help clarify what Matthew said there as well, you heard Michelle say it a little bit earlier, but the only way I can cover a cost on a budget like this that's already double this year than what I had budgeted for is it comes from somewhere else in one of my other budgets. So we have the big budget, all these accounts as a whole. I'm borrowing money or taking money out of one of those other accounts to cover it if it goes over.
And generally, we tell the department heads they should not overexpend by function. So in this case, this is a weird exception because there's one line in this function. So, but departments generally should not be overexpending by function, and the 9106 in itself is one function. He's, as far as the state goes and far as an actual budget adjustment, yes, if there's enough to cover from the other areas of the 9100 funds, we won't have to do a budget adjustment. However, it kind of goes against what we teach people on their departments.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question, but I think we should set an expectation here that if you are at that $20,000 limit that I do at least, I think the board would probably support you coming back and asking for authorization rather than taking it out of other areas, because then it's on you. You come back later and we say, well, we budgeted all this for mops. You're like, well, I don't have any mops because I spent it all on, the district health repair. So
Agree.
Right.
it makes it really hard for us to know that other line items are being spent where they're being spent. So please do come back and get authorization to go outside of this function.
I agree.
It seems to me at some point it should come down after what we've spent in the last few years on that building, but apparently,
I think you're going to see it go up.
Okay.
Their equipment's, some of the rooftop equipment's 20-plus years old, so.
Buildings don't get younger.
No.
That's good news. We could spend more money. Thank you, Kenny.
Full of good news,
I
yeah.
mean, this is Santa Claus in February, man. All right, well, it's good discussion. All right, with that, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Bittenger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed. Motion passes 5-0. On to the Triview facility.
Tribune 9109 has a decrease by 14.2%, basically driven by lower professional services. When I talk about professional services, I mean something like maybe an HVAC compressor that needs to be recharged. We bring someone in, our technicians aren't qualified to do that, so that would be a professional service type of event.
All right, any questions?
Move to receive.
Second. Motion by Nelson, second by Bittenger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. On to the new LEC Justice Center.
The new LEC is account 9113. There is no comparative budget. We've done our best cost estimation on operating expenses based through some outside sources previously to give us an estimate on cost per square foot operating expenses. That is what we projected these figures off of. Time will tell, I guess.
And you'll see changes on your screen on here. There were 2 employees that were moved from those other accounts to this line.
One thing I do want to talk to the board about, which isn't really reflected in this budget, but will and could be. This particular facility is a little bit different, comparative, much like Siouxland District Health. There could be a repair incident in this new facility that exceeds what any budget amount would be here. Past practice has been, in that event, I come to the board and I ask for capital improvement project funds to cover the costs of whatever that event is. Similar to what I would do at Siouxland District Health if there wasn't budget money there. Let's say we lose an entire roof unit. It's $60,000, we need to replace it at Siouxland District Health. I would need to come to you and ask for CIP funds to get that project completed and moving forward. No different do I see the new LEC at some point having some sort of an incident, whatever that dollar amount may be that might not be in this budget. I may need to come to you and/or the Woodbury County Law Enforcement Center Authority and request funds. I'm not so sure that, as we're talking about these budgets, that the LEC Justice Center and Siouxland District Health shouldn't be, I think the board should at some point consider a number of incidents of approval. In other words, if it were Siouxland District Health, Siouxland District Health couldn't come to Kenny 10 times a year or 15 times a year or 100 times a year with an unlimited number of occurrences. I think we should consider, after you hit so many occurrences, what you should do with those two facilities. Just my opinion, food for thought.
Well, I would agree, I would echo with Matthew. I mean, this maintenance repair, budget, yeah, I mean, if you get requests beyond that, I think you should come back to the board, yeah. If that happens.
Right.
But, yeah. All right, any other questions? Comments for Kenny on this budget? All right, I'll move to receive.
Second?
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. All right.
That said, I just have that was the last account. I've just got a few quick comments, again, for the board to consider and then think about moving forward. I'd like to see a change in the future operating budgets as we look at them. We've been, we as county directors have been, I believe, very frugal with the county funds for the last several years. And again, I've tried to do that again this year. However, with the buildings and facilities that fall under my realm, I will say that I don't believe, I believe we could do a better job of our operating budget, but a better job means increasing those budgets. To explain that, what I would like to see is in an annual operating budget, for instance, the auditor's office or the recorder's office, if they'd like their carpet replaced, I'd like to see that in an operating budget. I'd like to have a line item that would be sufficient to cover things like $20,000 in carpet, rather than come to this board and ask for a capital improvement project to complete that work. Now, Dennis Butler, when he was here, had an opinion that if I hit $20,000 on an item, it was a capital improvement. That doesn't help me when I'm up to between 1 and 19. So what the budgets really do, or what the accounts really do, is they're really holding me to my biggest drivers, which is utilities, and not much else to play with. So if I wanted to replace the carpet in the recorder's, auditors, or human resources office, I can't do it within my budgets. I think the board should consider allowing that in the future. I think it would be a good idea. I understand then you're borrowing funds that you may not utilize, which is, in the board's eyes, probably over borrowing. But I think there's some justification for doing that. So just wanted to talk about that briefly.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for you and all your employees do.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a lot of square footage to take care of. Yep. All right, thank you. All right, Board of Supervisors is next. So we've got CF rebates and miscellaneous refunds.
Okay, so the CF rebates for the new board members, I don't think anyone on this board right now was here when an agreement was made to bring CF to town. And that was to rebate CF the county portion of their taxes for 20 years. So we're still within that period. That will end in fiscal year 37. So what we do to account for that is calculate, estimate what their taxes will be for the fiscal year. And then that affects the general fund and the rural basic fund. This is the first year that I have calculated this. I had some calculations that Dennis had done in the past, and so I did the best I could to duplicate it and feel that it's pretty close to what he came up with, but not exact. When the taxes come in from CF, they actually apportion out to the general fund, the rural basic fund, the debt service fund, and the general supplemental. However, we do not pay CF out of all 4 of those funds, so he had a way to calculate it out. So what I did is I put the total amount to the general fund because that matched with what, close to what Dennis had, and then everything else I put to the general supplemental fund. So any questions about that first? So I put in here for our budget director for next year, my calculation in the notes so that he can maybe use that as a reference for the future to have a consistent formula on how to come up with the calculated amount. And CF actually has a lower taxable value in fiscal year 26 than they did in fiscal year 25. So it comes out to 687,734 from the general fund and 233,355 from the rural basic.
All right, any questions?
Is that correct, Ryan? You've been with us for 24 hours, so I mean, you've been here.
Yes, that's exactly correct. I will trust Michelle's calculations.
Okay. All right.
Good answer.
There you go.
All right, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. All right, on the Board of Supervisors expense.
So this budget covers the elected officials' pay and board expenses. The expenses were entered by Heather and Karen, and the payroll is calculated through our payroll budgeting from the auditor's office. And I believe that this is the way it's always been. Did Dennis enter any of these figures? The figures that Heather and Karen entered this year are the same figures they've entered in the past. And anything that Dennis would have entered, I worked through to figure it out and put it in there.
You know, like Dennis used to speak on most of these items, other than like maybe public bidder or medical examiner. But I've made some notes in case there's some questions on some of these that I am aware of, that I usually work with, but,
I guess I just have one quick question. What's the $900,000? That was from last year, but not for the coming budget year.
I'll look that up. Give me just a moment, please.
Wasn't that the unused
Something from the
LEC,
LEC, I
the old
believe,
LEC, yeah, it was
and it,
unspent revenue, unspent budget, yeah, I believe. Oh, hold on, she,
Less, obviously, but I'm like,
right.
haven't seen that on any budget yet.
Good question.
our department is very frugal. That's where it comes from. Is there any one of these, like starting with like stationary? I mean, this is where I'm gonna start from, so I don't know if that's where you guys wanna be at right now, or we're waiting, but
I mean, everything from the stationary stuff down to professional services looks pretty on par. I know that it's the big increase is that hours legal work.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's, which we need to put that in there. But, and the fiscal audit,
like the fiscal audit, we did notice that that contract is up at the end of this current fiscal year. That was a 3-year contract with Williams and Company. I mean, there's always been some sort of issue come up, so it's always been above that contract amount every year. I mean, right now, we're at the 61, and I have a bill on my desk right now for 14, so
yeah.
not really sure where we should keep that, but we put in 80.
Yeah.
And like the professional services line item, you guys remember that is our legal fees with Allers for the Summit Carbon System, or Solutions. So we're in that contract with a total of like 9 other counties, so that one.
And Allers is still doing some stuff on the LEC
LEC,
too.
right, yeah, so
Yeah.
there's, it's multiple, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Michelle?
so that 900,000, that was, related to the unexpended LEC Justice Center that was allocated back here. So that was, a one-time deal, so that would not be duplicated this year. But I do appreciate it if you see anything like that, where you see revenue from last year or something from last year that's not in this year, to bring it to our attention, because since this is kind of a new process to some of us, we want to make sure we don't miss anything.
All right. Any other questions or thoughts? All right, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. On to the Board of Supervisors, Board Administration.
So the one thing on this budget that I entered was the revenue for the auditor's transfer, and we have the conservation loan of $132,600, and then the general basic benefits can be moved to general supplemental. And this is one thing that I'm not sure how Dennis came up with these numbers, so I just, I actually looked up the benefits that we're paying out of the general basic fund, and that's how I came up with my number. His number was a little bit higher, so I think he maybe calculated something a little differently. If I find out something else, and I can bring it back to you to let you know if we can find some more revenue there.
Okay.
Thank you.
We did, increase like the school instruction, $500 and, just because, Ryan, I'm not sure what he's gonna be attending, and, also, I would say that,
Are you saying that because Ryan is a University of Iowa grad, he's gonna need more School of Instruction?
yeah, we're gonna have to pay for those
I'll
trips,
second
I
that.
think. And I would say that we should probably increase that mileage, what we've got plugged in there at 300. That should be increased. I mean, one trip to ISAC for Ryan would be like $280 just for one trip.
So
So
you're
that
saying
should probably be,
even up and beyond the 300, you're saying? Is that what,
yeah.
increase that even more?
Once again, I'm
Which
not
line?
used to doing this, so I
Mileage?
don't know if you guys go line item by line item or it's just overall or what.
Yeah,
but-
41, 300, and looks like
Yeah,
2 years ago we spent 700 some.
that was when Dennis was healthy and he was going to like spring school and such. So that was just, Dennis alone, that was his mileage when he was doing his thing.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point, Heather, but I think even beyond that, I think Ryan's gonna be busy getting out to different departments and getting all over the county, and so and locally, so I think that we maybe should even look at raising that to 750 or even 1,000.
I would say so, yeah.
It's, yeah.
Does this one include Ryan's salary in it?
Yes.
It does, this currently shows it too.
Right? It should.
Yes, I mean, we put a placeholder in there of 130. I'm not sure what, if we considered any steps that may be coming up, because we didn't have him hired or know what he was making at the point that we budgeted.
Sure.
I mean, looking at everything, it looks to be. Most stuff's on par.
Machinery and equipment, what do you think in there?
Well, I should have done this before, because Dennis and I had talked about it, and he, instantly was like, well, go pick out some chairs. And like Karen and I's chairs are probably 9 years old. So, we just plugged that in for office chairs for Karen and I. It's probably low, but I haven't even looked at office chairs in a long time. I don't know if you're familiar with office chairs.
Yeah, we've been doing a little shopping. We've got
Okay.
a budget for chairs, and, I mean, it ranges from like 350 on up. I mean, premium 750. So, but what about Ryan?
He has a fancier chair than Karen and I already. It looks like a dentist chair, but
We'll see how this budget goes, won't we, Ryan? I don't know. It's performance-based budgeting for the budget director.
I mean, he hasn't complained yet, but
Then it's a good thing you hired a UI grad.
I think 1,000's fine. I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
it was when I looked at it about a year ago. I mean, I had some picked out, but things were a little crazy, so I never did it, but.
I'll move to receive with the amendment of, line item 41,300 employee mileage. I would amend that to, I'd say 850.
That's fair.
Let's just see what happens this first year, Brian being in the position, traveling and,
So an increase of $550 to
Yeah.
850.
yep, to 850, yep.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes 5-0. On to public bidder.
I don't remember what that first thing was, like the revenue, obviously, I, never know, I can never predict what that is going to look like. My, recent sales aren't in here yet, but like even this year, we're at 34,000-ish. But just depends on how many requests I have for property and each year, but, we did recently get rid of a property that we've had since 1993, so that was good. Kenny's probably gonna be really happy about that, but.
Okay.
The only thing I think that when I was looking over this again on line item, for professional services, 42601, we have in 3,000. Not sure, I really think 2,500 would be fine. Those are for lien searches for, when I'm obtaining property, I order a lien search and then I proceed with the process, notify who I need to notify for whoever has a lien or a judgment, so. But I think 2,500 would be good, but that's the only other thing I noticed.
I think it'd be fine to reduce by 500, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, Dennis always put in that revenue number, we never really discussed it too much, he just put in a number and was what it was. I mean, we wanna go back years and years ago, when I first came into the department full-time, it was, okay, well, your revenue should be about this much to cover your extra hours in the Board of Supervisors office, because originally I was only part-time. But
This one is an expense that you're referring to,
the revenue,
professional services?
oh, when I asked for the 2,500 to be in there instead of 3,000, that was
Yes.
for professional services.
Okay, because you
42,601.
mentioned a revenue, but this is an
Yeah,
expense,
I'm going
correct?
back, I go all over the place,
Okay,
so that's
just
why I don't
making
do
sure
this.
I'm writing down the right number to change, thank you.
I took my Adderall today. It's about as focused I'm gonna get, so.
And this is something you love, speaking in front of everybody, right? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
So I do have the history pulled up on that line, and you can see the activity. Fiscal year 18, it was 2,800. Other than that, it's,
Hey, could reduce it to 2,000. I think
Yeah.
we're still gonna be fine.
yep.
let's do that.
I'd move to receive with the change to 42,601, a reduction of $1,000 to $2,000.
Second. Motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is mail services.
Like right now, the postage is at about 36,000 for the year. 17,000 of that is for tax statements alone. There are some mail services that Tina, they pay for, and then, but the Board of Supervisors does cover the tax statement fee under postage. But the majority of that is that, but 65 is probably good.
Well, I mean, looking at years past, I mean, looks like we could reduce it. or do we?
Yeah, I could.
There has been some discussion about some duplicate statements being mailed out, and I think they're looking at the software to see why there's a mail to and a deed holder that are both the same person getting the same statement at the same address. So there is a potential of some cleanup of these costs, but I can look at the full history if you'd like here.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want
I
to look at
think
that
it,
'cause-
maybe a couple years ago, I think, well, last year, I think she went with a different company.
Yes.
And then the year before, it might have been around 16 something. I can't remember which was which. And then maybe the year before, it was like 16,000 as well. So maybe about $1,000 off right now. But with that 17,000. But it has been lower.
Yeah. We could lower it probably 5,000 pretty easy.
Oh, yeah.
Probably, yeah.
You could probably even do, even 7,500 would get you, you'd still be higher than anything in the history. Anything in the higher, of the highest history, so. Michelle, could you also, if, when everybody's done looking at that, if you could also pull up the history on the contractual services at 44,901?
Yeah, those fees have gone up. The metering contract fee has gone up some over the last few years as well. I don't exactly know how Mailhouse figures that. But that has gone up. I don't know if it's different for different items they mail for us. Like me certified is a little more, I don't know.
Yeah, because look at 22 and 23, we budgeted, what was that, 3? And then we was at 5,400, 3,500.
Yep. I think we could leave it alone at 5 probably.
Probably, yeah.
2022 was a pretty major outlier for whatever reason, but
I don't know.
I would move to receive with a $7,500 reduction on 41,200 and a $1,000 reduction on 44,901.
I'll second that. Motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. On to district court operations.
Okay, so district court operations, we used to pay for parking for the judges, which we no longer have an expense for that. We have a telephone expenses that are reimbursed, so it's a zero budget.
Okay.
Move to receive.
Second. Motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes 5-0.
I think, so that was like 4,700 on the parking. I think we saved about 9,000 and change on the attorney's parking, didn't we? Yeah.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Next up is the court-appointed juvenile attorneys.
Okay, so this includes a state base fee that's required under Iowa code. If you look at the activity, that has not been paid yet for fiscal year '25, so that activity will dramatically increase when that comes through. And that's under the attorney fee line. Based on the historical data, I put 300 in on that line. And this also is some attorney fees, interpreting fees, and things that we're required to pay from the clerk of courts.
All right. Any questions on that? So it's a decrease of 19,000 in the budget, which is good. All right.
Move to receive.
Second. Motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. On to Rolling Hills Region.
Hi.
Melissa with Human Resources. I in the past have helped with this fund. It includes, is that the 1.5, correct?
I was on the next one. I was like looking at the wrong one here. Yes.
Okay, we're good. Okay. So, looking at the fixed cost, just for this calendar year and insurances, it's like at 1.2. Now, that would leave us 250,000 for the variables, car accidents, lawsuits, any other, liability issue that might come across the desk. So that's why we're increasing it a little bit, and obviously all insurance prices are going up.
Yep. Any discussion? Questions? We're on. I mean, Rolling Hills.
Risk management.
Oh, we're risk management service. I said Rolling Hills, didn't I? I apologize. I'm sorry. I apologize, right. I was like, wait a minute. That's not adding up. I apologize, everyone. Risk management services, yes.
Okay.
It's not
Start
you,
over?
It's not me,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I apologize, yep.
It's insurance cost as well as other liability lawsuits and car accidents and that type of risk that would come across the desk.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Bittinger, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Melissa. Now on to Rolling Hills Region.
So the Rolling Hills region, after communicating with Dawn, she said that we only need to budget for I believe the advocates, and there's 2 of them. So this budget should be reduced based on budgeting for 2 individuals instead of what's been budgeted in the past. And this is reimbursed by the region.
Great. I move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Carper. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. On to the solid waste landfill
Who is the liaison for that
for,
landfill?
I'm one of them.
yeah,
Dave? Okay.
Dave.
So this will be a rural basic fund, which is our limited account, and we did receive a letter requesting a 2.5% increase to Gill, and then the county share of rent is $24,852, so it'll be an increase of 2.2%.
All right. Any questions on that?
Move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Nelson, second by Carper. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Next is the township officers.
We may have had this included in the auditor's budget, but we'll talk about it again. So in July, there was a voted increase by the Board of Supervisors, July of 2023, to pay the township clerks $20 per hour for their bookkeeping, and the trustees and clerks receive $25 per meeting if they request. Not all townships request this. I don't think Matthew nor I ever received any reimbursement for our duties during Grant Township duties. We have seen a little bit of an increase in the budget since those rightly so have increased for the wages. So I did put in $8,000. The reason why I increased it, and you'll see right now we're at 3,285, is that we're waited for claims coming in now because right now is the budget season, so this is when they have their meetings. So we got a lot of the reimbursement requests are still to come.
Sure. Yeah, you know, not as many, there's probably not another trustee out there that was a true civil servant like Matthew was to Grant Township. I mean, you were really passionate about Grant Township.
And just for the good of the public and our two new board members, I was the erstwhile chairman of the Grant Township. And several claims that went unpaid for several months were paid. And I made sure of that.
It was a dark time.
It was a dark time, and, you know, so as the erstwhile chairman of Grant Township, I'll move to receive.
I'll second that, but there was a lot of people seriously worried that Matthew would step away from county government just to pursue a career as Grant Township trustee. And he pondered it for quite some time, but after a bunch of prayer and reflection, he decided that he liked us better. So we're happy that you're here with us today. So, and thank you for getting Grant Township through that very tumultuous time.
All right. Motion by Young, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Maybe we should bring a board agenda to retro pay and benefits, you know.
That's fine. Supervisor Radig already gave me a plaque. I'm good.
Paid in full.
That's
Ask not what Grant Township can do for you, but what you can do for Grant Township.
All right, moving on, number 12, tax increment funds.
Okay, so the TIF funds are tax apportionments that we receive to use to pay off debt for projects. And earlier this year, you had signed a TIF form, and the amount this year is $786,850 for that portion that will be allocated towards debt service.
All right. Questions? Hearing none, I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Benjer, second by Nelson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Next up is wage plan adjustments.
So just for a little back of material, the wage plan that I've been asked to embed within the budgets is 3% for all of the wage plan individuals. And I know sometimes it's been asked, well, who are the wage plan people? So I did include in the backup a little bit of information. We have 7 department heads, 24 supervisory individuals. We have 18 part-time and 21 full-time, so a total of 70 individuals that this amount will affect. And then if you look at the next page 3 and 4, it lists by department and line item the wages that each individual makes in the department that they work in. So there are several departments that are included here. And if you have any specific questions, this is the budgeted amount with the 3% included for those individuals.
Why is there 3 on the EMS admin?
So those are part-time, those are EMT individuals. And that's the department name, EMS admin. Admin is gonna include your EMT basics, your EMTAs,
Okay.
your director, and I believe that the clerk is AFSCME, so she won't be included in this.
Yep, that's right.
There's also individuals who follow the AFSCME contract who are not included in this list. They're not included in those counts.
Yep.
So there's individuals within HR, the Board of Supervisors, Secondary Roads. Am I missing anyone? Veterans Affairs who follow the AFSCME wages, so they would not be included in this wage plan increase.
So typically, we receive or review this later on in the budget. Is,
We went off of the schedule from last year and just kind of pieced it together, so this may have been later on and just the way it fell. We have next week is the last grouping, so it may have been in the last time. It wasn't intended to have it any certain place, but this is where it ended up.
Mr. Chair, I would just open question if the board would rather consider this during, after or around the time where we know about the two contracts that are up. Additionally, there's the elected official raises overall that I think take place later on towards certification.
The elected officials will be on the date of adopting the budget. That's
Okay,
when you can
that's-
decide on changing what the compensation committee recommended.
And that date is exactly the Tuesday before April 30th, is it?
We're shooting for April 29th to hold our public hearing to adopt the budget.
Okay. Yeah, there's just a large gap of time, so I don't know how that's gonna, how anyone else feels about that.
Not that this would happen, but if the board does wish to increase it, we have to have that included in the max. So we're at 3%, and that's what's embedded within what you're receiving right now. We have 2 more meetings after this before we need to know the max amount.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Matthew. I think we probably should receive it as it is to get it in the max levy and then, like everything else, decide later, once we have the full picture, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I guess we do have 2 weeks is our timeline here. If we were to make any adjustments. I just wouldn't want, us to do something for our union employees and then our excuse for wage plan is, well, we can't be equal with you because, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, we were capped. So that's just a consideration we have to have as a board is if there's gonna be a big disparity, we need to be able to explain that to our wage plan employees.
So you're saying you'd like to wait until after the March 5th publication?
Well, obviously, if it's beyond 2 weeks, we couldn't increase if that's what we wanted to do. So we do have 2 weeks, but in that 2-week period of time, we need to be thinking of how we're going to be explaining this as a whole package to all the employees, based on the fact that most of the employees are going to be outside of this deadline here, right? I mean, this is for, that's what I mean.
Yeah, we want to have our maximum amount calculated within the next 2 weeks. So if there's a possibility that you think that this should be increased, we can put that in there because you can always decrease it. You can't increase it again after March 5th. It's set as the maximum. So I'm not sure when the negotiations are for the 2 contracts that are up, but we really, really need to know what the maximum amount are that they're thinking about so that we can get that embedded within here. Otherwise, we're gonna have to figure out where to come up with that money if we don't have it in the budget.
So on that March 4th, that's when we can make that, we have our final decision March 4th.
Right,
Right, yeah.
but you gotta realize that I have to get the file out on March 5th, so if there's a lot of calculating that you're gonna say on March 4th, now I want this, it's gonna be a lot of work for our staff to do in a short period of time. So the more we can plan ahead, you know, the easier that load will be on March 4th.
Well, with that, I would say we could postpone this till next week to give us all more time to think, and there's no rush to make that decision today on this. So, and I think it's always good not to make decisions in a rush atmosphere. So I would move just to postpone this till next week and bring it up next week, so. So yeah, I'll make that motion to postpone until next Tuesday, February 25th. If that's what the board would want to do.
I understand what Michelle says, and obviously we want to not pile on at the last minute to respect your work. I think what's really tough is, I don't know what we have in the budget as far as if it'll allow us to go over 3% or not. We're dealing with constraints that we haven't had before. And so I would almost hate to, insert a 5 or a 6 or some sort of percent, and then it's like, all said and done, say, well, it actually was 1% was all we could do, and then you just kind of got everybody worked up for nothing ultimately. And, this is just an unusual year, and we're all just working through it, but I would be more of the mind to take the 3% now, and for our people, best case scenario, they can get that, but we may not even be able, that may not even be attainable. And we're dealing with a totally different set of parameters this year than we ever have before. And our hands are tied. So I would be fine delaying it too, but I don't know that I don't think it makes sense to move much off of that 3%, because personally, I think we're gonna have a hard time achieving that, to be completely honest.
I think I hear what you're saying, Mark. I still think even 1 week delay wouldn't hurt, because next week we'll be reviewing everything, finalizing a few last line items, and I still think give us more time to think, make sure we're not acting out of any haste, but yeah, I do agree, right, 3 might be the best we can do.
Do we need a second so we can discuss this?
Yeah, oh yeah, it's true, we need a second, yeah.
I'll second it.
Just seeing where this discussion's going, we could simply receive it as is and next week reevaluate it. There's nothing that says we can't review the same division every single week.
Right.
We could do that. We're not necessarily showing our hands, so to speak, by approving what's in the estimate right now. But I do think that we need some commitment, at least, from auditor, the chair, that we'll reevaluate this in the next week or two, that it will be on the agenda for discussion, especially if we have some idea on the other raises. Because if we do settle on 3, then that, at least for me, that's going to inform some of how I approach these other items.
Right. Yeah, no, if we move it today as is, I would put it on the agenda for next week, or to talk about as a discussion item, yeah.
I'm okay with either. I'm okay with,
Okay.
if you want to withdraw and we just receive.
Yeah, I'll withdraw the motion.
Then I'll move to receive.
And I'll second that. Motion by Nelson, second by Bittinger. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes 5-0. Last, Hard Rock gaming fees. And with that also is the Siouxland Regional Transit System, so come on up. Come up and introduce yourself and.
Okay. I'm Brian Pearson, the Facility and Transit Director with Siouxland Regional Transit System.
Michelle, are these two separate? Is this 14 and 15?
So,
Is this- my-
so we did have 3 items under Hard Rock. We removed 2 of them.
That's right.
So your backup material may have the 2 that were removed before, on Monday. The only request that I'm aware of that we've received is from the Siouxland Regional Transit System in the amount of $35,948, which is the same amount that we have funded in the past. And as Dennis would have said, normally the approval for these are funding in order to leverage other state and federal funds. And that is what the Siouxland Regional Training System does. And this has been a recurring expense that's paid out of the gaming funds. And then throughout the year, we look at gaming to determine if other things should be funded by that. We had, believe, one other request that may come in next week under gaming that we haven't received yet, but we're reaching out to them just to make sure that we didn't miss something that maybe would have went to Dennis. And then there was one other item that comes in on occasion that does not have that leveraging piece, and so that has been denied in the past. That was the 3rd one on that original agenda.
Okay,
But
thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
So the funding does quite a bit for our transit system. So the cost per trip for general public is between $4 and $7. And our actual cost per trip is about $35. And 45% of the ridership that we do for Siouxland Regional Transit System is coming from Woodbury County, out of 7 counties, which 5 are Iowa, then 1 is Nebraska, then the other is South Dakota. And we're looking for it this upcoming year, as we're in budgeting season right now, is to increase Woodbury at least another 15%, so that could go up to 60%. In terms of, we've been hiring drivers. Roughly, we have 41, and we have 3 that's in the pipeline of getting their CDL. And so we're continuing to do that. Since November, we've been hiring quite a bit of drivers, and we're going to continue to hire more drivers. We want to get to at least 48, so it'll meet our spare ratio between what we do with Siouxland Regional Transit System and also the City of Sioux City Paratransit. And lastly, I'll mention very quickly is for the Law Enforcement Center, and I know we've had some discussions with the city that we're open to support the jail with transportation, so.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm liaison to this as well, and I've been out there and met Brian, and, you know, just looking at what they do, it's, he does a great job. They're expanding their drivers and their fleet, and then at some point in the future, you guys are looking at, you're going for a grant to expand the facilities as well.
That is correct, yeah. We applied for a $12 million federal grant. It was a raised grant when we applied, but now it changed back to build, and it's very competitive discretionary grant. So we put ourselves in, pretty good contention for the grant. We'll see how it goes, but we did get a lot of support, roughly about 20 support letters across the tri-state region from senators, U.S. representatives, and also just different organizations that are intricate to the whole process of what we do.
I'll move to receive.
Second. All right, any other discussion? Motion by Dietrich, second by Carper. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Pass 5-0. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
With that, that concludes our budget review. Michelle, why don't you go ahead and give us an update on that?
So I wanted to give you an update on the timeline for the budget. So next week, we have budget reviews. Today, at our board meeting, we'll be fixing the date of a hearing for our CIP, which Treasurer Bertrand's been working on. And then that has to be published. We're shooting for publishing that between February 19th and the 28th. And on March 4th, we'll hold our CIP pre-tax levy hearings to get all the CIPs in order, and we do have the amounts of those, and those will be included in next week's budget, which has our debt service, I believe. March 5th is when the auditor House File 718 data poll will occur, which is when we'll pull that date of the public hearing for the maximum tax asking. That also needs to be published in the paper, which we're looking at publishing that on March 6th. Then we still can discuss the budget. We can have the budget as a discussion topic on maybe every board meeting, where we can continue to possibly reduce if needed through the adoption publication date. So on April 1st, we'll hold our property tax levy hearing, which is where we will be, which is what is the date on the notice to the public for the maximum asking. And then for our public hearing to adopt the budget, we're looking at publishing the budget on April 3rd. So we're shooting for April 3rd to have the final budget adopted, or prepared to adopt, because that's the date that I have to have it to Heather and Karen to publish in the timeline that we need. We've always had problems with one paper not publishing it on time, so we've had to ask for extensions the last 2 years, which were awarded because it was a legitimate issue. We had submitted it in time, it just wasn't published correctly. And so in order to prevent this time, we actually could push it out to have our public hearing. We could have it published on April 17th, but April 10th will give us one more week. So if the papers have an issue, then we'll actually still have another week to get it published properly and adopted on April 29th. So I'll kind of clean up my little scribbled timeline and get it out to all of you so that you have that.
Okay. All right, any questions? All right, we are recessed till 4:30. Thank you.